I can't wait for you to meet our friends, Jeff and Lexie. I'm not even going to try to say their last name, but if you feel you are sick and tired and you've been fiddling around with real estate long enough, you need to hear Jeff and Lexie's story, because they talk about how you work with each other as partners and spouses, and how to get through some really tough times. And they lay it out. We cannot wait for you to listen to their story on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing and life. Please join us.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we tell you about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. I'm one of your co-hosts, Christy Candle. I'm a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own backyard. And today I'm joined with my co-host, Eric. How are you doing today?
Hey, doing well. Yep, my name's Eric Stenbakken. I'm a real estate investor also, some long-term, some short-term. And things are not always on the up and up, are they? I mean, this is just how they are. I mean, I don't mean like legally on the up and up. I mean, just like it's not always up and to the right where everything is awesome. But today's a good day. And I'm excited that we have Jeff and Lexie Bodenmuller on our podcast. We worked pretty hard to get them on here. They're busy people. They got a lot going on, and they're joining us from Florida, close to Christy, but they're calling in from Inglewood in Sarasota County. And we are glad to have you on the podcast. So you almost had an awesome studio in the background.
Dude, you had to bring that up. Yeah, that was sorry about our this
salt in the wound.
Yeah, this is our ghetto house that we're rehabbing currently in Florida. But I was very, very close to having our awesome studio all set up. It's all done. I just had some little things that just couldn't get finalized before our podcast today, which is super.
And that's because you guys have pretty much nothing going on, right? I mean, it's pretty much just.
Yeah.
He was sleeping.
I was sleeping in, and she's like, we have a podcast. And I'm like, oh no, I better get up. Yeah.
Okay, though, to be fair to our listeners, Jeff did prank me yesterday because I reached out to him. I said, hey, you guys good for the podcast? And he's like, who is this? What are you talking about? I was like, no way. Yeah, he totally had me. So
that was pretty good. It was interesting because you're such a put together person. I was like, this will be good. So I kind of did it, and I waited a little bit because like usually you can see when someone else is texting, and I was like, now. So I did like the laughing face.
Yeah, I was in shock. I was laying on the floor. Yeah, no. It's good to have you. It's good to have you on here. You all are very active in so many spaces and communities in the real estate investing and work, universe. Tell us just a little bit about some of those places that you are active and some of the things that you are doing right now.
Gosh. Yeah, where do we even start? Okay, so we are Better Life Tribe members. That was first and foremost. That's kind of how really got the ball rolling.
Yeah. So tell people what that is.
Yeah. So Better Life Tribe was started by Brandon Turner. It's you pay to be in it. I think right now they just have coaching, and that's $700 a month if you want to join that. But through that, you have one-on-one accountability coaching that's through the tribe. And then also you have access to the tribe and all the tribe events and stuff like that, which they have a summit coming up in Austin, June, which that'll be pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, so we joined that. And then from there, we've been there over a year or so, and we became coaches in the tribe because the tribe did so much for us and changed our lives within a year just by doing what kind of the habits and things that Brandon has laid in place. And we did that, and it worked for us. So now we're coaches.
And that was where we met these two amazing people.
Yes.
And I wanted to say, I don't know how many of your listeners know how giving both of you are. And it was actually like you two are some of the first people we met because you do go out and give. I think Christy might have been the first person that Jeff met. So thank you to you guys because you're both, just all about giving back.
You guys pour a lot into that community and just in general, like with this podcast and stuff. So it's just cool, like full circle to be here. Like now you have a podcast. I just think it's awesome. So besides that, yeah, like we do short-term, long-term. We just got into self-storage last year.
We're always in a live and flip because once it's done, we're not making money sitting around here, right?
Exactly. I literally earlier today did 2 different Home Depot runs for different things and put the tile that delivered while I'm here in the garage because, Why not remodel while you're living in your property?
Yes.
No, exactly. That's actually, I call it second Home Depot because I practically live there.
Yeah,
She's
the
been
guy at the paint counter tells me, he's like, "Wait, 3? Isn't that too many gallons of paint?" I said, "I don't want to come here again." He's like, "Oh, you'll be back a lot more." I'm like, "I know."
Yeah, the guy there is something. Well, you need to buy this because prices are gonna go up. I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll be back regardless.
Yeah.
Right. So you guys are in a ton of spaces, and I think that's a great place to start. But let's pick one specific approach to real estate that you did, and that's the live-in flips. And we're going to circle back to some things about how you met and married, and kind of your philosophy working together. What's it like working on a live-in flip? Sometimes just think it's the romantic. It could be a plot line. I don't know if it would be a romantic comedy or a drama, or if it would be, a scare movie,
I think it would be a thriller.
horrors. So what is it like living with your partner, spouse, investor in a live-in flip with family going on? What in the world is that about?
It's a lot.
Yeah, so I think you wrapped it all up. It was like comedy, drama, horror show, like everything. It's all there. So it's a lot. Our daughters grew up in them. We've done I don't know how many now. It like now that they're both grown and pretty much gone. Our oldest is 17. I was thinking back and I'm like, man, like every place we would buy, like we move into it. Like the first place we moved into it, it was a dump. And our kids were like, what the heck, really? And we'd fix it all up, make it nice, paint the rooms and everything. And then they were like, oh, we love it. And we're like, out of here, next house. Right. And we just kept doing that. And yeah, so that part was, I feel interesting for the kids growing up in it. And sometimes you feel bad because you want them to have like a home, but I feel like they gained so much value because they helped us with everything. I mean, the last house we did, we roofed it, we put siding on, we did windows, built a 1,200 square foot deck. It was a huge house on the river. It was a big deal. It was like 2 stories high. You're like 40 feet up roofing this thing with our kids. And we took them all to Mexico for that. So that was their treat. But yeah,
it's to help us roof the house. You get a 1 week all inclusive trip to Mexico with the money we save.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was during COVID. So there was like nobody around. It was actually pretty good.
Okay, so good. I was picturing toddlers up on the roof. Maybe you had a pack and play balanced up there. So okay, so these were young adults you got going on.
No, we only did that with the toddlers when there's single story. They only fall like 8 or 9 feet. It wasn't too bad. No, I'm teasing. No,
but I get it. I remember taking my son and putting up a pack and play in the empty living room of one of our early rentals while I'm banging away in the kitchen, working on countertops and doing stuff like that. And then when we, knew it was a safe place, he could play around on the floor because the carpet had been replaced and all that stuff. So why, I ask you this, why the live-in flips? You could have done a bunch of different things, and you have, but it sounds like you didn't do one and quit. You did this repeatedly. What was the behind that decision?
I get that's a good point. It was kind of the opportunity because Jeff was still working full time as a highway patrol officer, and I was home with the kids. So I just started doing, renovations. And it was our plan the whole time, but we've definitely gotten bigger and bigger projects as we've gone. So that one was very cosmetic, especially compared to what we've gotten into now. So I could go home and work on things while the kids were at school, while Jeff was working. And kind of, it's unfortunate, but then for us, it was beneficial with when we bought and then when we went to sell, there was like catastrophic wildfires. Our values just were so much higher. We were like, hey, this is, a really good way to make money and have a place to live. We try to buy, like the worst house in the nicest place. That's our so it's just kind of worked out.
And it just I think a big part of that too is we saw the return after we finished it. Like we didn't really know. The first one we got, we were just trying to get out of renting and get into a house. So it's like, that kind of deal. And then we finished it and we're like, I don't know, like we'll see what it'll go for. And when we got appraised, we were like, what the heck? Are you kidding me?
So the first one, we made like 120,000. And then the second one, we made almost 300,000. So we were like, yeah, this is probably more profitable than being a doctor.
We can suck it up for this. All right,
Yeah.
we'll do this. So
Yeah.
back to when you would go home after while the kids were in school and you would do projects. Did you have a background in this? Did you were your parents? How did you go, okay, well, I'm gonna just start figuring it out? YouTube University?
Oh yeah, you definitely YouTube University. My first ever project was painting an accent wall with Oops paint. We've come a long way from the mauve wall. So it was just, one thing at a time. You can literally learn anything online now. So, there's no excuse. There's experts that show you how to do it and what to buy. Worst thing that could happen is you mess it up and then have to call an expert,
Okay, that's a really good point here, because some people may feel like, well, I didn't grow up with a family who was in this. I mean, Craig Parsons joined us on the podcast a while back, and I think he started at 6 years old or something like that. It's like, okay, come on. Like, that's a pretty early start. Most of us don't have that. What was it, Lexie, in you that just said, I think I could do this? I mean, why were you not afraid to do it and just sit on your hands and say, fine, I'll just pay whatever vendor as much money as they ask for?
Well, I guess the first thing would be we didn't have the money to pay someone. That was the initial, and then it's like, okay, really anything that you screw up short of, someone dying, enough time and enough money and you can fix it. So it's like, really, what's the worst that could happen? Like I put in
That's
tile and it has to be ripped out. So,
right. Did you actually visualize that as a hey, look, actually the worst that could happen is some paint drips, or we've got to replace carpet or whatever. Did you have to tell yourself that, or was that just kind of something you kind of had a hunch about?
I really felt like, okay, I mean, yeah, what's the worst that can happen? This is not going to happen if I don't try. So let's just start, start doing what we can.
It was fun too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think when we got into stuff and we did the whole creative side, we're like, I think we're going to reuse these cabinets and do trim on the sides, or we're going to do this backsplash. She got her first tile saw and was cutting tile and laying tile for the backsplash, and it just took off from there, because you start to it's empowering, right? You see, you're like, oh, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, if you start with something simple and then it works, then you can slowly build that confidence. Similar to momentum, with they say the snowball rolling down the hill. It's the same with doing your own projects. So
Completely agree. My very first property, very similar exit to you guys, where it was an accidental house hack, and learned how to use my first drill to put in curtain rods. We had April on, my friend in Tahoe, who just no, you need to learn how to do this. This is easy. And then that went from there. And I remember my electrician replacing a light, just a simple light that I would never pay anyone to replace now. And it was 3 wires. And I'm like, oh, but what if you shock yourself? He's like, well, pain means that you're alive. I'm like, okay. I'm okay with that. As long as it's not microwave or, high, the voltage that can kill you. But yeah, you learn from that and you pick up different things each property. It doesn't mean that you'll continue to do it. I've learned I don't have the patience to do things like setting tile perfectly and waiting, or doing drywall and sanding and mudding, but you at least know what that's like.
And that's the beauty, I guess, of working with an opposite partner where he's high speed and I tell him all the time, I can't keep up with you. But then the little meticulous things, little pieces of tile and a backsplash, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Jeff doesn't do that. We had the first report of me doing tile. My daughter was home with us, and I may or may not have said a lot of curse words. Is I mixed the mortar to, she said peanut butter consistency, and I'm thinking well, there's that natural peanut butter that's real
it was like the oil on top of it.
Yeah. So I'm in there trying to smear this stuff and they set it on there, and it's dripping all over me, and I got it all over my clothes, and yeah, it was all over the walls. It was such a mess, and I'm like, gosh dang, because I was trying to help her, because at the time she was going through some medical issues and stuff, so I was trying to get things going. And my daughter, I think she called you.
I was at physical therapy, my daughter calls me, "Are you almost home?" Dad's really upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so yeah, like we balance each other out really well, right? Because that's what we've realized in this. Like you were asking earlier, like there's a key thing of like knowing what you're good at and what the other person's good at, and allowing them to do those things, and then also when you can, learning from that person the skills that they have, right? Like I tried my best at tile, but I'm like, okay, it's probably not. I could do other things, but at least I know how to do it, and she taught me those things. So just balancing each other out, like really helped us get a lot done.
Okay, that's a great segue to where I wanted to go, which is how do you figure that stuff out? Because a lot of people have partners, whether they're married or not, but they're closely aligned in a lot of things, but then they get into business. They get in, especially in a live-in flip. I mean, you are literally stuck in the middle of this. How do you work through those things where it's like, look, I don't want to slow down to do this, or now you need to step away where I do the detail. How do you work that kind of stuff out to figure out whose lane is what, and use those differing personality styles to your advantage as a superpower?
yeah, that's a super good question because I think that we've learned each other because we've been together for so long. But people that haven't spent as much time, with their partner or spouse, it's like there's that kind of learning curve, and especially as far as like communication, that's probably the top. So we've kind of learned each other, but I think that's part of working on the book. We're like, okay, what are tools that we could put in there that can like speed up, this learning and delegating and, kind of the how to communicate and how to find your strengths. So yeah, we're to the point where it's like I just know he does that, I do this, so we're thinking back, we're like, okay, how did we get there? So that we can
Yeah.
share that with other people, because at first it was not easy.
Yeah, no, and in our business, that's a good question too, is because that's one thing, right? Working in those houses and doing those things together. But then when we started like having businesses and stuff and like getting involved in that, it was at first it was frustrating because we were like kind of like fighting with each other, like I'm like, I'm underwriting this and you're, whatever. Well, again, we did that same thing we did in like when we're doing live-in flips, is like I'm not good at that, so I don't need to do that. I don't need to argue with my wife. I need to let her do this because she knows numbers. I pretend like I do, but I don't. So I got away from that and I went and did stuff that I'm good at, like acquisitions, calling people, getting money in, and those kinds of things. Those were my traits. But with that said, she has a really good way of connecting with people. So if we're raising capital or whatever and talking, as we like to, when we're doing that, we like to build relationships with these people because it's very important to us. But she's good at that too. So like I'll get in, get the conversation going and talking, and then she's really there to console and really get to know them and learn about them and stuff like that. So I feel like there's parts where she contributes and it really works. So just like with the live-in flips, it's like transferring that over to the business. It's that same thing. You go like, you're good at this, I'm good at this, I'll stick to this. But if I can intervene and help in some ways, I'll do it for sure.
Right. Yeah, and I guess that kind of brings up the point of each party has to be able to set aside their pride and acknowledge what they're good or not so good at. So with both of us, we've gotten to the point of like, okay, whatever it is that needs to get done, we are like in the same boat, right? We're rowing the same way. I don't need to work
Right.
against him because I think how I row is better, So realizing that is probably the first step for anybody, is just, that self-reflection, what are my strong suits? What do I need help with? Yeah, that's a huge
Yeah, and
part
like
of it.
getting over yourself. And that's just in marriage in general. It's like you really give up yourself for the other person. I feel like a lot of simple things in a marriage is like your focus needs to be that other person 100%. And if that other person's focus is you, most likely your marriage is going to be successful because you're always concerned and want to do what's best for them. As humans, we're very selfish. So naturally, we're like, oh, I love you, I'm taking care of you. But then little by little, we're like kind of going the other way. We got to remind ourselves, like, this is your focus. So,
and I guess on the business side, if you're not married, that would be okay. We're both working together for the business to move in this direction. Like we have the same common goal. We might not agree fully on how to get there, but just compromise sometimes.
Compromise is a big one.
Yeah, especially when you're married. That's such an important point. I had a business partnership that eventually we parted ways on things because it became clear to me that the final destination of what we wanted to do in the business and how we were going to get there just was not aligned. And so we were kind of pulling in opposite directions. And I think that's important anytime you work with a partnership, especially a non-married one. I will say this, I'll preface it with this, is that you plan the exit from the get-go. All right, is because partnerships usually are for a purpose or a project or a time period or something like this. And so planning for the exit, I mean, it's just like what you do when you flip. You buy a house and you flip it. You're not building it for yourself. Like I was just considering putting an indoor sauna in our place, taking out the fifth piece in the master bathroom set, kind of the big tub that nobody uses anymore, right? Like, hey, we could put a sauna inside here. But then I'm thinking, yeah, that's going to be one of those things in the real estate listing that's going to say unique property. And I'm like, I don't want to be putting that in my listing. So, right. So I'm planning for the exit right now. And as you do partnerships, it's worth talking about those things. Be overt about it. Sit down and say, we are going to talk about direction. We're going to talk about lanes we're going to travel in, roles, responsibility. How will we exit this thing? And in your case, it wasn't exiting, your relationship. It's exiting the sale of a property. It's like, we're going to do this. I remember I had a conversation with a builder. He built one of our properties. It's a great property. And we walked into one of his other ones that was unsold. He said, well, what do you think? I said, oh man, I think this is a really cool property, but the color. He said, well, I like it. I said, you don't build the house for you. You're building the house for someone else. And he said, really? Do you really? I said, yeah, it's that much. Like, I think it'd be worth repainting this house. This is north of $1 million, right? And so was the cost of painting worth it? Yeah, I think it was. He repainted it. He sold it shortly after. But I want you to talk about, because Lexie, you said something about, well, the book, as we're working on the book, y'all know something about working with your spouse and working in real estate. Take us back to what you meant by the book.
Okay, so we're working on writing a book right now, and it's geared towards working with your spouse. So it's funny too that you mentioned, like, even with the business partner, like, where are we going? What's the plan? How are we going to get there? Because that's the first like suggestion that we have is like, align your goals together, align where you're going, because you're going to be in the same boat. You have to end up in the same place. Or if not, the alternative is you're going to end up going different directions. So yeah, we're working on basically, like our best tips and putting action steps in there too, so that people can work through that, not just read about it, but we're wanting it to be something that couples can do together and actually hopefully open up good conversations of things that people typically wouldn't think to bring up. Because especially men and women are so different. You're like, I never thought that you would want that, so communication and talking about it is, the first big step. So in our free time, yeah, we're working on a book.
What was your catalyst to go, hey, we want to go ahead and throw this in on top of everything else that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah,
that was probably
question.
me. She always calls me the motivator,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
That,
like on Wipeout.
Yeah, that TV show Wipeout. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but there's like, if the people don't jump, there's this big ball.
I'm at the edge.
Yeah.
Like, let's calculate. Let's measure it.
Let's like, we're gone. So yeah, I don't know, but it's okay. So it's interesting when we were talking about like the catalyst, right? Like there was so many things that just started happening. Like talking to friends and other married couples and stuff. They were struggling just in general, or they were trying to do real estate and the other one wouldn't come on board. Lots of these little calls and things we were having with Better Life members and other people. And we're like, man, so we were like encouraging him, like, oh, you should, like, here's some ideas and stuff like that. And then I think I told you, I was like, we need to write a book, and I was kind of like, I was serious about it at the time. And she was kind of like, we have no time to do that.
Like, yeah,
sure,
but
in the future.
Yeah. Exactly.
But like, because that was one of the questions I had to myself, and I think we both had, was like, what qualifies us to write a book on this whole marriage and working with your spouse and all this stuff? Like, what is it? Like, we're not experts. We don't have any background in that stuff. Well, what qualifies us is all the struggles and all the hardships and all the crap we went through, individually, together, and with our family, and doing all these flips and all this stuff together. That's what qualifies us. And, it's so interesting now as we're starting to build the basis of this book and starting to write it, how many things it makes it just like, it's just perfect. It just fits right in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I guess we could go back in time too, to where, we weren't planning on working together. We were forced into working together. So
why don't you take us back into that a little bit? So, because some of the you've alluded to some of the struggles that you've worked with, and you've been through. You've just said, yeah, we've been through some stuff. Break it down for us a little bit. What's some of the stuff that you two have had to work through, whether it's relationally or with some health issues and things like this, things that really ramp up the stress far beyond, I don't like that shade of mauve on the wall?
Yeah, I guess that would be, we had our own, ideas of what path we were going to take in life. And then, so I started having health issues, which, was why Jeff was doing tile. So I found out, it took over a year to get diagnosed, but I found out I have rheumatoid arthritis. That was like, okay, we're kind of slowing down here. Well, Jeff was working 5 hours away, so he was commuting home on the weekends for about a day and a half. And I was taking care of the kids, like doing what I could on the house. Like I do tile, and then I'd have to take like a couple days off because my hands hurt so bad. So we were like in a slow, still doing it. But then Jeff had an injury at work, and while he was at home, he was so stressed out. I'm like, okay, while you're home for your shoulder injury, you need to go see help about your work stress, because it's just, getting out of
control. What was he doing for work right now? I mean, was he like typing a keyboard? That was really stressful for you. What was going on, Jeff?
Oh yeah, I did actually do it. Believe it or not, cops do a lot of typing. That's the part of the job that you're like, that's not cool. I wanted to drive.
That wasn't this
guns. Yeah, like
it wasn't this stress though.
Yeah.
So what was?
Yeah, so just I was a cop. I worked for the California Highway Patrol for like 10 years, and I would say probably about 4 or 5 years in, somewhere around there, I really started to I couldn't sleep. I was just having all kinds of just day visions, like crazy stuff going on. I'm like, what is going on with me? Well, went and saw my personal doctor, and I've done a lot of research with this, because I'm like, I know that if you go to report it, they're not going to keep you around. It's a liability for the department, which I understand in some ways, right? So I went and saw my personal doctor, and he's like, and you got post-traumatic stress. And I'm like, there's no way. And that's the funny story, is at the time, my buddy, who was a paramedic, said he was dealing with that. And I was getting so frustrated with this stuff, because it was kind of getting like, it was a popular thing at the time. I don't want to say popular, but it was happening a lot. And I started to really believe that it wasn't real, that these people were just trying to get out of work. Like they were just like, oh, I've got all these problems, except for a lot of the military. Well, was I fooled? That's what it was. So yeah, when I came home, I actually transferred back up closer. So I was like only an hour and a half away from work. So I'd actually come home every night. And I felt that would make it better, because I did not want to tell work. It didn't make it better. It kept getting worse. I started getting into fights and issues with my superiors and sergeants and things. And then I hurt my shoulder, and I was like, man, what the heck? I was losing weight. I was just going through a lot of just crazy stuff. And obviously at that time too, she's going through all these treatments and stuff, because she had fibromyalgia prior to that, and still does today. So she was just overcoming that. And then this hit her, and I'm like, gosh, there was just all this weight just kept piling on. Our daughter struggling in school, right? Everything's just piling on us. And when I was home for my shoulder surgery, she said, you need to make some calls. So I called my lieutenant at the time, which I loved, and told him what was going on. I said, look, I said, I need more time off. And he's like, I can't do that. You need to come back. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. So I did. And so he sent a sergeant up there with me that day, and we went to the hospital, and we filled out paperwork and all that stuff. So then I was put home. And that's when, honestly, it got much worse.
Well, I guess we should also let them know that he hurt his shoulder on February 26th or 28th of 2020. So, yeah.
So what happened next, Lexie,
Yeah.
in the world
I don't know if you
to bring everyone's stress down?
Yeah. I don't know if you heard about that little COVID.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. So so that came in.
So 24/7 Jeff at home was what happened.
Yeah. That's when things got really heavy, right? Because she's dealing with her stuff. I'm dealing with my stuff. I set up all my therapy and all my appointments right away to show work, like, hey, I'm coming back. Like, you're not going to get rid of me. And then I think it was right after February, March, somewhere around there when COVID hit.
Later.
Everything got canceled. So I lost all my appointments. Everything got shut off. Same thing with her, couldn't go to the doctor. All this stuff's going on. And it really became tough because I'm mentally just messed up. She can't physically, she couldn't get out and like take the dogs for a walk. Our house is a total mess. Have half the roof on, like everything's just a mess.
And also so as soon as Jeff tells them this, no more paychecks.
Yeah.
So we went almost a
year and a half
without a paycheck.
Yeah.
So
and I couldn't work, obviously.
Yeah, and he couldn't work because you're going through, this workers' comp stuff. You can't go work, even though it was a mental. Like, he couldn't
go
do anything, and I couldn't physically. So we worked on our house.
We worked on our house, and we also had this is where my eyes were open to real estate, because prior to that, we've been doing it for about 17 years then, somewhere around there. Most of it was all Lexie. Yeah. Like I said, I was gone. I would help her, but she would do the acquiring of the properties and stuff like that. That was when I woke up and was like, the only way, and it was God really, but besides that was just all the little real estate, little properties we had were just barely keeping us afloat every single month. And it was one of those moments for me, like light bulb, like, wait a second, I'm investing all the time into this for my brothers and sisters and my family, but really my family I've neglected for the last 5 years completely. Like, I don't even know who my kids are. And then,
so living off of our cash flow.
Yeah, living off our cash flow. And it was an amazing time to understand that, but also so stressed because like all this other stuff's going on. Like, I don't know if I'm getting my job back. I don't know if she's getting better. We can't go get medical care because they shut all that off. We
lost our medical insurance also. So we started, I guess that's maybe why we're like, oh, okay, we just worked through this. And then people are like, oh, how do you work together? How do you, what? I'm like, oh, you have no idea. This is nothing. So when Jeff was first at home, like, he would wait for me to go outside. Like, we were working on the deck. He would wait for me. Are you ready to go outside? Because he couldn't measure and cut a board correctly. Like, that was how
I was checked out.
Like, his brain was so...
I was just demoralized.
It was terrible.
Like, I had no function, just a total zombie around the house, no confidence in myself at all. Then we were, in the middle of this whole thing. So we're dealing with the state. We're fighting this whole thing, trying to figure out where we're going to go in life. Then we have to go up to Oregon for one of our rentals up there because the tenant left and trashed the whole house, right? We've been there, done that.
And we didn't have money to pay somebody to haul the junk out. So we were in February in Southern Oregon. It was snowing on us while we're loading a dump trailer. So I guess that's why when things happen now we laugh, because we're like, what are you going to do? It's
an experience at the time. But that was our moment. Like, that's where things really kind of turned, even though it felt like this is going to be it for us. We were loading that dump trailer that day. My attorneys are supposed to meet again. It was all virtual. They couldn't, meet in court and stuff. So they're trying to virtually meet and all this stuff. And he thought they were going to have a settlement and all this. And then he called me and he's like, hey, it's not going to happen. They're actually going to pursue you and try to go after you civilly. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what? So they're building this case on me now, saying that I was like a bad officer and I was on my way out. So I was trying to find a way out. Kind of went full circle on me. Again, no insurance for her. So we're in this house cleaning it out. It's a dump. Everything got trashed in there. And we're just in there cleaning it out. There's this homeless guy. And I asked him, I said, hey, can you help me? Because I'm desperate. Like, I just need stuff done. Can you help me load my truck? I got all this stuff in this shed back here. I need it loaded in the truck so I can haul it to dump. Be careful, because it was a new truck. And actually, I had to sell that because we couldn't afford the payment on it.
Before we sold it,
Before we sold it. So I'm in the house laying floors. She's cleaning up something in the bathroom. Guy comes back in and he's like, I'm all done. And I was like, that was really quick. And he's like, yeah, I kind of ran into a problem. And I'm like, oh, what's that? So I go outside and he threw a 2x4 through my back window of my truck. Yeah. So I was like, hey, here's the money. Just go. I'll come back. I said, no, I don't want you to come back.
Like, no, I don't want to see your face again.
Yeah, it's like, it's okay, brother. It's a mistake, man. Go ahead. So he leaves. In that time, we call the insurance, and they do vandalism on the truck. And the lady's like, is that the only damage? And I'm like, well, I think. And so she gets out and she's looking around the truck and she's like, there are scratches all the way around your truck. Like, because you loaded wire and stuff in there. And you scratched
every edge of the bed, the tailgate,
the roof. Yeah,
like
everything was crazy. So, yeah.
So I guess that's, if we could get through that, these little, the issues that we come across in other real estate, it's not as big a deal, right?
Yeah. And that's where we had the big turn, is that was that same day that the attorney told me that. He called me right back. It was probably like, maybe 2 hours later. It seemed like a year went by, but he called me back and he said, hey, you're not going to believe this, but they just called and they're settling, and we're not going to get what you expected, but you're going to get something, but at least you can have insurance back so your wife can get care. And that was like, still today, they're like, man, that was a big turning point for us. It just showed, like, we stayed committed. We kept battling. We kept fighting. Even though I'm struggling with stuff, she's got all this going on. It was like, I need to make sure she's taken care of. She was worried about me, and we just kept fighting. And then you started to see the tide turn.
So you guys went through something similar in the sense that you were doing real estate kind of on the side. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And then it's where you are now. I know you are like all in on real estate. You're in on all kinds of asset classes, all kinds of stuff. You lead a raising private capital group, all kinds of things like this. What was the thing that set you guys on that direction where you said, you know what, no more side gig? Like, we're going all in on this thing. What was it? Because I remember for me, I listened to a webinar, and it was actually Brandon Turner. This goes way back to 2020, before Better Life Tribe existed. And he said something as there's like 450 people on the Zoom call, right? But it was like he was talking just straight to me. He says, are you going to take real estate seriously, or are you just playing around with it? And I thought, oh, he's talking to me. And so you've heard of the Pareto principle, right? Like the 80-20 rule. It's like you get 80% of the returns from 20% of the work. Well, I sat down, I said, over the last 10 years, how much have I made from my photography and video business? Okay, so I wrote that down. Well, how much time did that take? Took a while. Guess, put that down. All right, how much have I made in real estate? Through rent, and mostly through gain of equity over time, appreciation. So I added those two things up, and I was like, wow, the numbers at the bottom are very similar, but the time and effort is wildly disproportionate. I was spending 80-90% of my time on the photography and video, but at the end of the day, the numbers at the bottom for income were about the same. And I thought, what if I put my 80% of the time into real estate? I was like, that was about a 2-minute thought process. I was like, oh, that's it. I'm in. I am in. I am not going back. I've already been through 2 major setbacks where I basically had to build my business from nothing over. And so we get this idea of security very wrong. We're like, oh, well, I have a job. That's very secure. But as you guys have said, that's not necessarily the case. What was it for you where the light bulb went off and you're like, this is no more a side gig. We're going all in. What was that, and how did you decide to move forward on that? You're smiling.
I think it's funny because I always tell people their spouse is not on board, right? I'm like, it's okay. It took Jeff 16 years to get on board.
I was going to throw myself under the bus, but that's true. That's true. That's really what it was, like me getting on board. But again, like, I was just trying to be the breadwinner and work and make sure my family's taken care of and do that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, when we went through all those moments of having no money and then seeing for real, that all our mortgage, everything was being covered by other little properties that we had. That was my moment of going like, oh, wow, this is powerful. So after I got kind of my treatment and everything out of the way and started kind of through the recovery, I needed something to do, because I'm like, go, go, go. And that's one thing with like police work, especially with what I was doing, was like, it was just like, you need something to do. Right. So I knew as soon as I retired, and I talked to a lot of like therapists and stuff, and they're like, you better stay busy. Like, you're going to go crazy if you don't. So I was like, okay, that's what we're going to do. And obviously I push her a little bit much sometimes, because I'm like, now this, now that, now this. But that was really, it was the turning point for me to realize just like you were saying, Eric, about like real estate and going, holy cow, that's amazing. And then now together, just working in it and together. Well, like I said, we weren't planning to do this together, and now here we are. And it's like, it's just amazing where you can go with this. So yeah, that was really the big turning point.
Stellar.
Yeah.
One of the last things that we do here is we ask people, where do you go for community and for inspiration? You've talked a little bit about Better Life Club and Tribe, Better Life, and your community there. And I'm glad you're carrying on. I'm an ex Tribe member of that. No shade to throw on that, but I'm not currently in it. So what other things do you do? Podcasts? Do you do books? What are some of the other things that you do to keep yourselves aligned in the mental mindset space?
Yeah. So we just started the Campfire Mastermind. We had our first event in March. And that was super fun. We didn't know how that was going to go. We're like, okay, and it's funny how that kind of came up. That was just a discussion with Brandon, because they were talking about the expense to do these big events that Better Life does and how much it costs, and they don't really recoup what they get. And I was like, why don't you do something like bring your own beer kind of family event, like literally just like whatever, like small, small scale stuff.
Smaller group.
Yeah. So
meetups. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, go ahead and do it, and we'll kind of back it up, like make it happen. So I did. And I got with Kevin Thusen, who's a Better Life member. He owns campgrounds, KC and campgrounds throughout the US. And I pitched it to him, and he was like, yeah, like maybe we can do it like off season for the first run, see how it goes. So we did it, and that was really, really fun. Amazing. All the people that showed up were supposed to be there kind of thing, right? It was very small group, like 16, 17 people. And we did everything together. We cooked together. We clean together. I mean, everything is done together. So it's really like you're talking about, Eric, is the community side. It's like people want to be part of a community, but they don't want to just be part of a, like talking and that. They want to, like, I feel like they really want to be involved. And that was our idea. There was get people there, get them involved. We do all these things together. And then we would sit down and break into even smaller groups and really go through hard questions and stuff like that. So that was amazing. And we're doing another one of those in October we're planning on. So yeah. And besides that, it's like Better Life and coaching and just staying involved there, and then raising private capital and some of these other little things we have going.
That's awesome. Jeff, Lexie, where do people get in touch with you? If they're like, man, a campfire mastermind, that sounds awesome. Like, I don't want to meet in, St. Louis or Las Vegas or New York or whatever. Camping sounds great to me. How do they get in touch with you? Yeah. How do they follow up with you?
Yeah. So for that would be the campfiremastermind.com. And then we have
the easiest, because of our last name. We just dropped the last name. And on Instagram, we're just Jeff and Lexie.
That's honestly, if you want to just get in touch with us. Yeah. 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 Because we do that's what people said is, I think, on Better Life Tribe, because I always, when we learned to do real estate, I would always, because I was like, my wife's the one that got me into this, so I included her in everything. So when we were Bigger Pockets members, any other real estate thing we ever joined, I always put Jeff and Lexie, because we do it together as a pair. And so that's what we became on Better Life and all this different stuff. So we were like, hey, we're doing Instagram. It's going to be Jeff and Lexie. Simple as that. It's easy to pronounce, all that stuff. BodenMillerProperties.com is where you can find us if you can spell it. Good luck. If you can, maybe we should give you something on the other side.
Right. If you find that, you win a prize.
Well, we might give them some clues.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you very much for being candid about some of the struggles that you've had because, as Christy and I have talked about, so much of the real estate podcast and promotional space is filled with winning, winning, winning. Everything is going great all the time. And I don't think that necessarily everybody does that on purpose, right? Because we don't want to post our worst moments necessarily. But those things happen. And we want to tell people in the world here via this podcast that, if you struggle with things, you can get through that. If you don't know how to do things, you can figure out how to do things. That if you're looking for community, keep looking because there is community. These things are all possible. And so thank you so much for being our guest and for being willing to kind of push this out as far as we did to get you on. I appreciate you making the time to do this. Anything you want to share with our listeners here as kind of a final drop of wisdom here?
I would just say for us, like, yeah, if you want, like you were just saying, Eric, like real stuff, we're real people. Like we don't hide anything. Our Instagram is unfiltered. It's the real deal. So currently we're working on the Rat House and we're almost done with it. And yeah, you'll see it's all real.
That's the first thing I thought we might talk about. I'm like, oh, we want to talk about a project on a ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, we like you. I value real people, and I think more people need to see that, not just the highlight reel.
Yeah.
Just to know you're completely normal.
Exactly. And thank you guys so much for coming on and sharing the truth about what this all is and partnerships. And I think you're the first couple to come on. So really to share, hey, how do you work together? How do you invest together? What does that look like? So awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
For having us and for all that you do outside of this too.
All right. Well, thank you all, listeners, for joining us on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, the truth about real estate investing and life. Thanks so much for joining us. This podcast is for information only and not professional advice. Please consult a qualified professional for your specific needs. It is also not gardening advice.